Hello, everyone. I have a beautiful, beautiful discussion. I have a guest with me today. It is Teodora. She's a fellow Romanian. She's just living in a different country right now. And we're going to talk today about a lot of beautiful things. Hi, Teodora. Welcome.
Hello, Liana, and hello, everyone. Thank you. And it's an honor to be here. And it's great to share this space.
Great. So let me introduce you to Teodora, first of all. Teodora is a coach in early trauma, complex trauma, and mind-body specialist. She offers guidance and helps women who are impacted by their childhood experiences and who want to find their true voice and be able to express themselves without fear or pressure. So we're going to talk a lot about these and even more. Our discussion was going to be a bit different from what we are going to do because there were some changes right now, and both you and I, as Romanians, we know what's going on in Eastern Europe as we're recording this discussion. So in case you don't know or you're watching at a later time, as of February 24th, 2022, Russia started invading Ukraine. And initially everybody said it was an invasion. Right now, I call it a war. And all the neighboring countries to Ukraine, Romania being one of them, are receiving refugees. And secondarily, people who are watching the news are also worried that maybe what is going on in Ukraine might expand to other countries in the region. So Teodora, I'm guessing you also are watching what is going on. Is there anything like that you want to tell people who are watching now, who are affected by this?
First of all, really thank you for opening up this conversation and acknowledging and honoring not only our stress or how we interpret this, but their pain and suffering. Because a lot of the time, just by acknowledging it, it really helps us to be with and connect with the pain, because a lot of the time we want to push it aside because it becomes too much. Second of all, yes, it's not an easy time what we go through. I personally, I understand what's going on. I am, yes, originally Romanian, and I come from Piatra, which is actually closer to the border with Moldova, so and Ukraine. But I've lived for the last 16 years in UK, so I do feel it, because yes, it's very close, and our whole history with Russia and in the countries. But in a way, I personally feel I can, because I'm a more distant of it, I am able to support myself or my inner resources a bit better. And but what I do find is in the conversations with the women that I work with, and I work with a lot of Romanian women, I see the same things happening. The state of freeze, the state of overwhelm and complete fear. And of course, the fear, no matter how much we try mentally to get over it, fear is very much a body response. It's a body reaction. So because we function very much from the nervous system, our nervous system and our body will begin to respond in ways that we cannot necessarily control from a mind's perspective. But first of all, yes, I want to acknowledge and to say to the people that are watching this or they've been affected by this, that we're here with you and we stand with you and we stand for peace. And I stand for peace. And actually, especially on this day, I want to say that I want to say stop to violence. Violence, what happens in war, but also violence towards women. Because 11 years ago, I lost my best friend at the hands of her boyfriend.
I'm really sorry to hear this.
That's okay, thank you. So yes, that was just a long bracket, but it was something that has really come up for me today.
No worries, we have space for this. So as a woman also a little closer to the situation, working also with women, first of all, I observe, because I have a lot of Romanians, especially on my Facebook account, my personal account. There are a lot of Romanians, and in my news feed is just exploded these days, and it has been since February 24th. People are triggered, and some of them don't even know it. So they are hyper. This is an American expression for people who are always like connected to the energy source and just hyper. They are hyper triggered, and they are propagating it with every post and opinion or comment, or they butt heads in comments, or some are posting also these horrendous images. And I look at all of this, and I'm trying to show up also for my fellow Romanians. It is super hard for me to stay grounded and centered, and also ideally Zen. So there are days when I struggle with all this, I call it vortex of trigger, of trauma, of all the negative things. It sucks you in. It is that powerful. And it is extremely, sometimes some days, I need to ground myself and like push myself to do my practices so that I can get out of that space and just be Zen and be there for people. And what I did do, and this is what I encourage everyone, this is my main message, try to, because when stuff gets triggered, the mind, unless it's super, super, super trained, it cannot help you. It will go like a monkey in all directions. So try to ground yourself, and ideally you want to do body related things. For the not so trained ones of us, and I include myself here, my mind is not that disciplined, then body work, body workouts, somatic practices, these help. This is what I've been doing. Since day one, I opened a support group evening and morning for women. I have all Romanian women, and I get what I get the women that come to the group. Some of them have emotional molotovs, and the molotov is made of fear and anger. They go from fear to anger, from fear to anger, and they somatize it in their stomach, distress, discomfort, or mental fog, inability to focus, inability to like they are sucked in that vortex that I was talking about. So body work, body workouts, fitness workouts, anything related to the body definitely helps. Now, how we're going to do this is the discussion that we're having today. So if you allow me, I want to read first of all the structures so that everybody knows what we're going to approach, and then we tackle them. So first of all, work with your emotions, centering, grounding. So what does this mean, and how do you do it? Then the second topic is feeling safe in the body. Why is it important? Do you feel safe, and how can you feel safe in your body? And the third one, why intimacy in particular is a resource in times of stress or tension. And we're going to talk about what a resource actually is, and how it can help, like how intimacy can help, and then how you can do it. So those are the three topics that we chose for today. Let's look at, first of all, what it means to work with emotions, centering and grounding. So first of all, what, from your perspective, what is centering your emotions and grounding your emotions? How would you put that into?
All of these subjects are one of my favorite subjects to talk about. And of course, the intimacies, that's in a way your specialty, but also how important that is. But yes, in order to get to that, we need to start with the basics. The basics is, so first of all, with emotions. The first thing to know about emotions are not something that we think about, it's something we feel. Emotions are a body-based experience, not a mind experience. The mind also helps to bring meaning to it and bring the words of what we experience, but emotions are mainly felt in the body. Also, in terms of emotions, that I always say, like, emotions are like waves. So they come, they get to a peak, and then they're meant to die down. But what happens, and I see it in my work, and it's something that I experience until I learn to work with my emotions, to contain them, to process them, to release them, is what happens is, especially from our early experiences, They come, we get to the peak, and then we get stuck here because they become too much, too overwhelming, and we don't know what to do with them. So we get stuck here, and we never let them to wave their waves. And that's why, in a way, that's when we begin to get symptoms. And the symptoms can be physically, so like you said, IBS or stomach pain, heart palpitations, muscle tensions, mentally, like you said, brain fog or rumination, or never stop, yes, going through the loops, or even a way emotionally where we get really super triggered by things because our emotional cup is just full. And because if we're constantly here, there's no way for us to know what to do. And that's why, in a way, centering starts from a place of really creating a safe space in the body. And that's why we're going to talk also about safety and what that is in the body and why we need that to be with, to contain. And like you said about, like you notice with women going from fear to anger or from anger to fear, is the fact that, well, anger and fear, they both sympathetic dominance. So they both from fight or flight energy, the sympathetic nervous system activation. So we're already, and when that happens, we're disconnected. There's all of those are ways of disconnecting from our experience, from our body, because it begins to not feel safe anymore. The pain begins too much. So all of that is where it's like, nope, I can't be with that. I can't be with that. And the nervous system begins to shut it down. Also, in a way, with the emotions, anything that's not processed, anything it's not worked with, seen, acknowledged, because they don't have where to go. So if it comes to the peak and they have nowhere to go, where would they go? So if they're here, they're going to come down into the body. That's where we get the symptoms. And all this important with emotion is to, first of all, to really begin to name them. And I always say, for example, people, and I work with especially with women, to say, oh, but I don't know what I feel. And they get really frustrated because I don't know. If you ask me what I feel, I don't know what I feel. And I said, yeah, okay, great. I get that. And I hear that. It's important to start with the sensation, to name the sensations we feel in our body, because that will help us to identify what we feel. So the centering is about really beginning to create that space of curiosity and presence to our sensations. So sensations in the body. And ideally to begin to slow down, because if we are in fear or in anger, fight or flight, we hyperactivated and we're contracted.
Hyper, yes. That's the word.
That's the word. Yes.
Word. You're hyper all the time.
Yes. Yes. And if we're hyper, like you said earlier, is the mind was already going to a million places. And only when we begin to slow down, we begin to notice our internal experience. Because if we talk like that and we go very fast, there's no way we can notice that. Only when we slow down, we notice.
Yeah, beautifully put. My take on this, so grounding and centering your emotions and how you work with them, basically. Also, where I relate to is presence. So maybe sometimes you don't realize where it comes from, because most people that when they initially come to a session, at least in my case, they don't know, they don't explain themselves what's going on. And one of the first practices is, okay, let's see what's going on in your body. It takes for some people 1 session, 2 sessions to realize, okay, what does it mean and what do I feel? So it just, at a certain point, you got to start working with it. And the key thing is to remain present with it. And what I've seen is that if one woman, at least in the group, said, it is so easy to do this when somebody guides you. And I said, yes, if you've never done this before, you won't even have the space to sit down and be present with your body and what is going on inside it. So that's why it's important to have guidance from somebody. And how you work them, like the practices of being present, questioning everything, connecting to everything, and then actually containing them and allowing them to discharge. That is a work and that's an actual work that you have to do. So here I would encourage anyone to actually take an individual session or a group session. I think we both do both of these, and just start doing this, like show up in a space where, at least I don't know about you, but when I do especially nowadays with everything that is going on, my practice groups are like, okay, hi, people come in the Zoom. Hi, we're going to wait a few minutes for people to gather. And then, okay, sit down, let's start to practice. It's not as, so I'm a little more friendly there, but I'm just describing it now in few words. But I don't mentalize everything. I introduce them, okay, we're going to do this practice now. Here's in principle. And then we gently, and I do it with them. And it starts not in the first session, maybe after 2, 3, it starts to make sense for people. So centering and grounding, those are actually verbs. And what I want to encourage people is to realize you actually, to center and to ground, you're actually doing something, ideally with support. And you can do it.
Absolutely. And I think that support and guidance, it's crucial at the beginning. Why? Because I would say most of us, and especially in the way we had any form of trauma, was stressful, traumatic events or stressful experiences, the body will begin to, in a way, to be in that hyper state where it doesn't feel safe anymore. And doing it on our own, we won't necessarily have the internal resources to be able to do that because it doesn't feel comfortable, it doesn't feel familiar. And that's why, in a way, having support or guidance from someone external, it helps us to build that familiarity. It helps us to connect, because we need, a lot of the time, we need someone else to help us regulate because we can't do it on our own. And the same, I mean, and I'm sure you can relate in our work, and I do a lot of work with myself and on my own, because I know I cannot show up in a space if I'm not regulated myself, if I'm not grounded myself. I won't be able to contain anything that's presented to me if I haven't built that container for myself, first of all. And also in terms with emotions, a lot of the time, even if it's fear, anger, any of the big strong emotions, I call them dense emotions. So they're not negative.
So thick, you can cut them with a knife.
Yes, but also not necessarily thick in terms of the English, oh, you're so thick. It's like being thick is like you have thick skin. It's like, you don't care. So it's a different thing. So it's dense. So dense emotions, where in a way they have, yes, you can cut them with the knife.
Exactly.
Yes, but also with the dense emotions, especially, is that we need to move away. I would invite people to move away from the need to fix. What's important is to develop a different relationship to our emotions, to really learn to be with, to know our bodies, and to place our hands. How many times do we actually place on our hands to give ourselves a hug, or place on our heart and ask ourselves, what do I really need right now?
Yeah. So definitely inviting people to join sessions, somatic groups and support groups for this, because it's a wonderful resource to try.
Yeah. And also in any time, but specifically these times, it's so needed in healing.
Yeah. I think everybody in Europe is at a certain level feeling what is going on in Ukraine right now.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And talking about resources, or let's look at what does it mean to feel safe in the body. First of all, why it's important to feel safe in your own body. What is the idea? What's the notion of feeling safe? And how do you feel safe? How do you assess if you are safe or not in your own body? How would you describe to somebody the notion of feeling safe in your own body?
First of all, I want to make a difference between safety and security. In Romanian, for example, it's the same word, siguranță.
Yeah, true.
Yes, but in English, that's why I love the English language, because it very much pinpoints, it differentiates between the two. Safety, it's something that's internal and we feel it in the body. That's why we talk about safety in the body. Security, it's external. It's environment.
If you think of security, the Romanian word securitate,
yeah, it has different connotations
here.
So once again, can be very triggering.
Yeah, what to explain to anybody that is not from Romania, the Romanian Information Service was formerly known in the communist regime as Securitate, security. We also call them the blue-eyed boys. Not as in what was it, Game of Thrones, the blue-eyed, those boys. But so Securitate, when we say in Romania, it's like the Secret Service, Romanian Intelligence Service, and it's usually with a bad connotation. So that's why we don't use that word much.
Yes. But that's why, in a way, it's a difference, and it's important for us to differentiate between what safety is, because it's in the body, and security, what is external to us, our environment. And of course, what's going on in Europe or with Russia now, it's a threat to our security, which of course will also have an impact between safety, because our body and our nervous system constantly scans or sends feedback of information between what's happening external to us and what's happening within us. Our visceral reactions, our organs, immune system, nervous system, they're always communicating. One of the things to know how you to feel safety in the body is like when you're looking around in the environment or in this moment, what do you notice? Are you looking for signs of safety or are you looking for signs of danger?
I'm looking for signs of danger right now.
So that's a cue, and it's not necessarily something wrong, because of course we do that. The brain's main job is to keep us safe. That's all it does. If we think it's going to do something else, I'm gonna disappoint you. It ain't. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something to notice. And when we notice, like, okay, I notice I'm scanning for signs of danger. What do I need right now to feel safe? So then we can scan again, in a way, when looking at our environment, looking around, and allow your eyes to rest on something that it brings it that sign of, that's nice.
Under the bed. Under the bed.
Under the bed.
And then the second answer came, okay, somebody's got to stop that war.
But as you look in the environment, is there something that you say, this gives me a sign that, I'm okay?
The bed, the space under it, basically. In my case.
Yeah. So that's, and also in a way, that's not necessarily something wrong. Is that your nervous system knows that, God forbid something happens, it knows where to go.
Exactly. My work takes me above the bed. These days I'm looking at under the bed. I had to go under at a certain point. It's still the bed, so.
It's still the bed, yes. So the bed in a way has a sense of safety. And also in a way, how do we know we're safe in the body is like whatever I'm noticing, how I'm relating to what's noticing in my body. Because for example, if I feel like my heart is pounding so hard it's coming out of my chest, how do I relate to it? Do I get frightened? Do I panic? Do I contract? Or do I get curious about it and see what signals my body is sending me?
For those, I think, for people that never had any practice or training, I think those questions are really hard to answer. For somebody that took a few sessions, they start to wrap their mind around the idea that, okay, this is workable and I can work it. And I think that's it's not that somebody's superhuman here or untouchable. It's that you start to realize, okay, stuff can touch me, frighten me, trigger me, but I can also work it. So I think that's something to relate to it. And then you are also able to answer the questions that you just asked with practice, basically.
With practice. And I can say, you know, I always say to my clients and people I work, I see you because I was you and I still am you. And I'm sure you can relate, even though perhaps we know the practices, we do it. I too have days when I'm just saying, I'm going to put all of my practices on pause, on a side. I just need to be with whatever is or not do anything. And that's okay. Because we're all humans and we don't quite know when it comes on to stressful or traumatic events that are happening. We have no idea how our body's going to react.
No, that's
And
one of the, sorry.
No, sorry.
I was going to say that when I first began being certified, that's one of the things that I appreciated in my teachers. They were German, so I think that also is important to notice. In the northern part of Europe, people don't necessarily have the guru approach and mentality. So they show themselves as humans, no matter if they're teachers, if they have dozens of years of experience behind them. One of the first things that we heard, like in the first days of when we went there live to get trained, our teacher told us, you need to know one thing. We are here, we are teaching you the modality. We are going to teach you a lot of resources that you're going to get to learn and then apply. And we also use them. But you need to know one thing. We too, and some of them were in their 50s, we are human beings. We get triggered, we get challenges in our personal lives. And when that happens, we leave all aside and we seek other colleagues and we go and we get support. So somebody gets to work with us, we being the clients, not the specialists. So we're also human beings. And I think this is like, because you're in UK, I still live in Romania, the differences in cultures, especially when people go to specialists, are exactly here. We think that a specialist is like beyond or immune to the normal stuff and that they have it all figured out. And if at any point that person turns out that they're actually just a human being, mortal like everybody, oh, but I thought you had that worked out. So it's important to remember to everyone. That's why I liked my training, because my teachers were super grounded and realistic. Hey, we're also human beings. We're subjected to the same laws that everybody else is, laws of nature. And we too can make a mistake or feel overwhelmed or feel without resources in certain situations. And we go and ask for help. And there's no shame. It doesn't mean we're not good at what we do. It means that we're also human. And a few facilitators actually have the gentleman balls or the lady balls, ovaries, to own this extremely realistic fact. So we're all human here. And we also do inner work, because in order to show up for others, we have to regulate ourselves too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how we work with feeling safe in the body, let's see, as specialists, do we want to share a bit how we work with this? Or
yes, well, definitely in a way from going back in a way with emotions, with grounding. So we're just really landing, like I call it in a way landing, just landing into this space, being here in a way grounding, noticing the feet on the floor, the support, the surface we're sitting on. And even now, and I do this a lot, even in conversations, it's important to also come back into my senses and noticing what's going on for me. And then from here, I said orienting. So now we're looking in the room, looking in the space we're in, looking for signs of safety rather than for signs of danger, the cues of safety. And then also working with the nervous system with somatic practices, which basically it's a way the nervous system loves touch, slowness, movement, and repetition. So now we're really learning to be okay with, yes, even stroking our arms, but in a very, very gentle way, and how we can come back into the body, but in a safe and gentle way. And I would say it's a long life practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my side, as I started the somatic practices, I pretty soon I figured out I have non-sexual resources. And we're going to get to the resources in a bit. And then I have also sexually related resources. And depending on what is going on, I use my non-sexual resources, some of them being music, shower, and warm water. I'm not a friend of cold showers and freezing baths and all of that. My body just can't take it. I tried. Working out a lot and moving my body in various ways, stretching, and then some of the more complex, although non-sexual still, breath work. That one, it took a while of repetition until my entire being learned to stay with it, because it's not easy. So, but like real, not just in my sessions, I do like 10 reps, 20 reps. No. You start going for 20 minutes of breathing intensely like that. That's a challenge. And I actually needed, first of all, a lot of guidance, one-on-one. Somebody sat down with me and really supported me until today. I can do this on my own, but it took a while. So, and then the sexual resource, well, those are a bit kinky, so I'm gonna keep them for a different.
Now I'm curious.
Well, self-pleasuring is one of them, but it's not the only one. So basically activating sexual energy in various ways, and activating it for discharge. Usually, so if I'm triggered, most of the times I go to the non-sexual ones. The sexual ones, if it's just a mild trigger, if it's a really bad one, maybe I use it just to discharge. And anybody that's trained in the spiritual practices, they know that you can use sexuality, you can also discharge, although they don't necessarily consider this a wise way of using sexuality. Depending on the situation, and if you're not stuck in the paradigm of you should or you shouldn't do this, then sometimes your body's going to tell you you need to discharge. If you're too triggered, something needs to come down, like emotion, nervous charge. It needs to come down, and whatever helps you, you use it. But usually for me, sexuality, it's like if I use sexuality as a resource for grounding and feeling safe in the body, it's usually because I've tried everything else and it didn't work, so I went to this one. Basically, I got sunshine.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The light is beautiful as it is, shines through. And also thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that.
Very welcome. So let's look at why, because that was the last topic on our list. Why intimacy is a resource in times of stress and tension. And first of all, we got to talk about resources. Like we got to explain what resources are from a general perspective, and then intimacy.
I never quite thought about how to explain resources. Something that really helps us to feel safe or to be okay with whatever's happening. And resources can be either internal or external. So internal can be our breath, can be our touch, so self-touch, gentle touch. And external resources can be anything in the environment. Now I'm going to tell you why I'm looking there, because an external resource can be even like a teddy bear.
Isn't that cool?
And that's why I keep it here. And I used to have 2 small cars as well, because this is a kind of external resource that we can use. If I know I don't have access to internal resources, I know, because that's why he sits here, I can just hold it into my hand, and that really helps me to connect. And that really helps to calm down the nervous system in any activation. So the same, plants can be external resources. A warm cup of tea can be an external resource. And for example, every time I finish a session with someone, I always say, what can you do for yourself now to nourish? And that could be something as small or insignificant as it might sound, to go with it, just trust. And I always say also, whenever, if we had in a way a lot of stressful experiences, I think we do live in a very stressed society, we're very much taught and learned, or our nervous system, our bodies learn to be addictive to adrenaline and to be addictive to cortisol. And what happens is, that's why somatic practices take time, and even working with resources, is if we're addicted to that adrenaline, anything we do slow or gentle is like, oh, it's boring. But actually we need boring, because boring helps us to calm down the cortisol and adrenaline.
I have a funny comment about boring. Lately, I've started watching a show called Superman and Lois, and some of the cast was invited by Entertainment Weekly on an interview via Zoom, a lot of people in the session. And at a certain point, they asked the actor who was playing Superman about, towards the end, about what it was like for him to play Superman. And one of the things that he said, which a lot of people in the comments noticed, was, it's always like the bad guys or the fun ones, and the ones that are doing the right thing are somehow boring. And he was saying, I challenge somebody to try to always do the right thing in their lives. It is not boring. It is extremely hard to always do the right thing, because we don't always do it. So from his perspective, playing Superman in Superman and Lois, that was not that was not a boring character for him. And doing these kinds of things, like doing the right thing, being happy, it's not boring. It's super challenging. Being in a harmonious relationship, that is not boring. Like, people think that going in, roller coaster emotions and just breaking up and then coming back together and having all that chaos is interesting. And a plain, peaceful relationship would be boring. We're doing this kind of work, it's boring. No, it's not. You try it. You see how challenging it is. So, and especially in this world where everybody's hyper.
Yes. Thank you very much for sharing that and that perspective. I very much like it. Yes.
I saw the interview earlier today and I was like, yes, exactly. Doing the right thing is not boring.
Not boring. It's not.
Challenging. Yes. Not easy. Another thing that I can relate, like, just from my experience as a coach here on YouTube, I look at the channels that have like 900,000 and 1 million followers. The facilitators there in all their videos are blah, 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 blah. And then I watch back some of my videos and I talk slowly, and I talk like, I don't talk sensational, what's the word, clickbait stuff. And I'm like, of course, if people are always hyper, they're going to go to somebody who's also hyper and promoting hyper stuff. And us people who do the hard thing to actually work with ourselves, yeah, we get under 10K followers. Like, that's my personal, not necessarily rant, it's my personal whatever. I got a bone to pick with the online community who is also triggered and going for triggering stuff. And that's where the crowds, that's where they are. And then there are people who do stuff that is grounded. And it's like, yeah.
Because like you said, it's about a familiarity. That's what they know. So they will go for what's familiar. Because what's unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's also easy. Yes. Yeah. Easy and familiar. So yes, it's.
We're not the boring ones. We're just the ones doing the hard work here.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So my take on resources, I had a video sometime last year. I don't remember which one. I'll probably link it under, because I also explain like in detail resources. But I also see them as two types, internal and external. And first of all, people usually think of money or material stuff that they have at home, the economical perspective of resources. But there's also like you said, foods, gentle touch, objects that comfort you. I don't have a teddy bear. I have I have other accessories that I also use for my practices, um, sports related or just body work related or some sexuality ones. And the inner resources, I usually look at those. First of all, I look at the character traits, because sometimes character traits can actually become your resources. They can get you out of trouble. They can help you navigate instinctually challenging situations or seemingly dead ends in a relationship, in your workplace, in your business. So that sort of thing. Sometimes in situations of crises, like in real life. Then there is the knowledge that you acquired throughout your studies, your experiences. Those are also resources. Just because you remember how somebody fixed something or how you fixed something similar in the past and you can try it in that moment, that is a resource, because all of a sudden you have something to use and potentially to turn things around for the better. Um, there are also the practices, because they're not, you can't touch a practice, you can only do them. So it's, I call it an inner resource, because you have the knowledge and the trust that they work, so you start doing them. And when it comes to intimacy, knowledge, understanding, technique that you've learned, and you assess when to use it and when not to use it, your ability to communicate, that's a resource at all times, but in intimacy,
Yep.
turns out it's a much rarer resource. It's not just in saying, it's also in listening and then processing and not taking it personal sometimes, just taking in an information and using it, as opposed to, oh, are they criticizing, or so, as opposed to interpreting it as a personal attack. So those are, I usually explain resources as stuff, material, or non-tangible that you can use to change situations for the better, or simply bring more beauty, because in intimacy you also use resources to bring more beauty. So in times of peace and bliss, you bring beauty to the experience, and you bring soulfulness in your intimacy.
I love that. Soulfulness and heartfulness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question now was, why is intimacy a resource in times of distress?
I would like to start with a quote that it might help to bring some context to that. We come into this world longing for connection. And Stephen Porges, the creator of the PolyVagal Theory, says, we come into this world not only to feel safe, but to feel safe in the arms of another. And when is the time when we feel most safe in the arms of another? In those moments of intimacy.
Yeah.
So we cannot survive without someone else, at least one other person. And of course, in terms of the physiological processes, is the oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So we need that. From the moment we come into this world, we long for that. And we will do all that we can to connect and disconnect. So especially in these times of stress, of uncertainty, of unsafety, that is in a way the bubble. It is the safe bubble where we can feel like we belong, that we create security with, and safety within ourselves and with the other. So once again, it's a great resource and a much needed resource. So in a way, I will also in a way question or look from a place of curiosity for people that say, no, I'm fine on my own. No, 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 I don't need anyone.
Sometimes it
Because
can be the case. Not
yes,
all
it
life,
can.
but
Yes. But also, that's why I said I would look into it with curiosity when someone says that, because that also, in a way, sometimes that becomes, it's an adaptive survival strategy. When it doesn't feel safe, I cannot trust the other person, so it's safe for me to be on my own. But that's why it goes back in a way to connection. We long for connection, so intimacy, it's very important, but especially in these times, it really helps us to know we're not on our own. We're suffering, we can connect to other people and find meaning.
it's really hard to follow anything after this explanation. So my take here, because it's really, really beautiful what you said, it's simply that aside from our natural longing to love and be loved, and intimacy is more than just the sexual part, definitely. So it's physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, social intimacy sometimes, spiritual intimacy, obviously. Um, some say also about financial intimacy, so there's more there. The important part of it is that whatever form of intimacy you feel to engage in, like of these, and probably more if you start to look at things, uh, the important thing is that you bring a transform. So the you know that you used it as a resource because you transform. In most cases, you transform something for the better. Not only in times of war, also in times of peace. You transformed. You grew. You overcame something. So that's so for instance, when you go to a facilitator, coach, counselor, therapist, that is also intimacy. And it's a form of intimacy, emotional, psychological intimacy there, social somehow, though it's just two people, but still you're connecting in a way where you heal something, you work through something. So the purpose and the huge benefit of intimacy is that it helps you become better in a small way, a larger way. That's why it's a resource. The trust and the relationship that is formed there. And if you think about it, when you go to school, you don't go to school with the entire world. There are only few people that you connect with as teachers, colleagues, or peers. And you have intimacy there. And throughout time, you grow. When you take up sports, you don't play with the entire planet, lacrosse or polo, or so there are only few people that see you in that situation, and you become better not just at the physical part of it, but also as working with a coach, with a guidance, with a team. So cooperating, competing with the opposing team, that's also a form of intimacy, by the way. I'm never going to say that war is a form of intimacy. I'm not that advanced to call war that. Though if you think of soldiers, they don't fight with just anyone. So anyway, that's I haven't grown enough to really process that one. But intimacy in all shapes and sizes, including sexual one, is a resource because it helps you become bigger, better, solve something, work through something. So that's why intimacy is extremely valuable to have, and we can't live an entire life without it unless we are these Tibetan monks that are super advanced spiritually and on all levels. But that's not an easy life path to follow. But unless we're like that, we need it. And 99.99999% of the planet actually needs love, intimacy with another.
Yes, really beautifully said. And just, if I may, to add another, just one point in terms of intimacy and connection, is like you said about it's not only with first of all with us, with others, with nature and environment, and with divine spirit, universe, or whatever we want to call it. So there are different levels, yes, and of course we need them all. And there are times when we need some more than the other. But that's why, in a way, when we don't have a connection with one of these four, that we begin to feel unfulfilled because something's missing.
And that's when we seek somebody and we start working through our issues gently, and we can work. This is where we invite you to really consider working with somebody. Us, if you resonate with us, individually or in groups, where you talk about various challenges in groups. By the way, I'm not sure if in your groups you also bring up sexuality or intimacy, sexual intimacy. But the beautiful thing is in groups, because people think, God knows, what am I going to say there? You don't have to give away stuff from your intimate relationship, or no, you can just talk about how you feel about certain things, not detailing the things, but your emotions around that. Ask for guidance or just get insights and inspiration from books that other people read, or programs that they follow, or simply if you have a question, you ask the coach. And usually that's one of the challenges that the coach has. They're in the hot seat and they kind of share from themselves because that's their role, not necessarily from the people in their lives, but they kind of give you their answers, and they're usually more exposed than everybody else. So that's how usually the safe container is created, because the coach brings in, or the facilitator, the therapist, they bring in more from themselves, and that's how they ensure the safety and security in that group. So yeah.
Very profound. And yes, it's very important. That's why we also, when we're in a group environment, it also helps us to relate and to see we're not on our own that go through a certain experience. And also we get to learn that it's safe for us to express, and actually what we share or what we might ask, it will also help the other people there as well.
Da. Okay. Da. So Teodora, I'm really happy that we connected, and in spite of everything that is going on here, that we actually had this conversation. And I really hope that it helps as many people as possible. And I would actually love to, for the both of us, to follow if anybody has a question under the video, and maybe we can do a follow-up. Right?
Yeah, I would love that. Yes, I would love that.
Okay. And we're going to put links. So I'm definitely going to put links to Teodora's resources, so you know where to find her. And if you resonate with her, go and work with her. I'm going to put links about my stuff. If you resonate with me, I invite you to work with me. And let's grow, let's ground, let's center, let's feel safe in our body, and let's enjoy more conversations like this one.
Yes, to many more. Thank you. And I loved how you say the ground and grow. I really like that.
And I forgot to wish you something. Happy International Women's Day, dear woman.
Happy International Women's Day too, my dear.
Thank you. That's how I should have begun. Well, we ended on it. So happy,
yes,
happy day.
Happy day, happy day. I definitely think Women's Day is every day, but today we also have a special day to actually acknowledge it and commemorate it. So happy International Women's Day.
Super. So everybody, see you soon. Teodora, thank you. And
thank you too.
Have a blissful and resourceful and orgasmic, if you can, intimate life. Bye.
Bye-bye.